In a moment, we're going to be talking about your health. Noted author and researcher Christian Wilde with us. He is studying a number of scientific papers that affect all of us, and he's got a full report next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you this Sunday. First Sunday, Christian Wilde is an author, researcher. He has devoted 17-plus years to researching and reporting on all kinds of issues. He has helped a number of our Coast to Coast listeners. Christian also, of course, will tell us a little bit more about studies of something very important. And here he is back on Coast to Coast, the award winner, Christian Wilde. Christian, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, George. It's nice to hear your voice up close and personal.
It's always nice to hear yours, too, my friend. As long as we hear each other's voices, we know we're still ticking, right?
That's very important.
That's something that's working. Hey, you have been, and we have talked over the years about turmeric, as some people would say, this incredible spice that has curcumin in it. You have looked at now, and I remember telling you years ago, Christian, you better look into this for us.
You sure did, and I owe you a lot for that.
And you did. And what are you finding out?
Well, number one, it's got a 4,000-year history, perhaps longer, in China. It's been a favorite for countries like Pakistan, Africa, Thailand, Bangladesh. And then we know, of course, from our school books that Marco Polo brought it back to his emperor in the late 12th century. We know today that the National Library of Medicine, that's PubMed, their database, has documented some 5,600 peer-reviewed and published biomedical studies on turmeric in just the last 20 years. The database has also documented that some 600 different health conditions are benefiting from the spice. The body of evidence is remarkable. The multiple reasons this spice has gained this much credibility is because it has the ability to target many pathways and signaling molecules. It is unique in that no other, well, we can't say no other drug because it's not a drug, but no drug can do that. We can discuss, George, how turmeric is helping so many conditions and the science behind it, how turmeric could possibly help 8.1 million pre-diabetic patients from becoming type 2, of which there are 29 million. Also, how it helps with prostate and breast cancer, Alzheimer's and dementia. And what is most remarkable is that of all the things it does it without side effects. Every
and
conversation...
That's amazing.
That is amazing, isn't it? I mean, of all the conversations I have with the researchers or the books that I've read or the studies that I've read, no side effects, even up to 10 and 12 grams, which nobody will have to have that much of it. So how does this spice scientifically do all these things that the studies claim? I would imagine your listeners are wondering, so here it goes.
All right.
It performs as a very strong antioxidant. It's an anti-inflammatory, perhaps the best. It's antibacterial, anti-infection. In India, it is immediately applied to any cut, any wound, or skin abrasion. It's antiviral. It kills fungus. It's anti-cancer. It neutralizes toxicity and therefore used more and more as co-therapy in integrated medicine, which I am a big fan of, and I know you are, with chemo and radiation as it desensitizes the tumor and then mediates against the high toxic loads of the chemo. And it's also a potent immune booster. But one of the most interesting attributes is that it functions as VEGF, which means fundamentally it has the ability to shut off blood flow and starves the tumor. Tumors require blood. VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. And it should be said, Dr. Agarwal, who I will talk about quite a bit tonight, at MD Anderson has literally stopped breast cancer from metastasizing to the lungs. Several years ago, he established that. The American Cancer Association supports it. It kills cancer cells. It does do that. And it does it, George, without harming the good cells in a process called apoptosis or cell death.
Yet we don't hear anything from the mainstream media about this, Christian. We hear about it on this program, and we hear about it from you. Why isn't it blown out of proportion? It should.
Nobody can make any money on it except some of the pharmaceutical companies are scrambling now. I can hear the cash registers in the background. They are scrambling to synthesize it into a drug. And one of those drugs,
aspirin was made from the willow bark.
From the willow bark.
Same thing.
And Hippocrates was using it, way back 400 years before Christ. That's a piece of information you probably don't need.
You know what? It's valuable information.
Okay. Bear aspirin loves it, I know that. You have brought, George, to our attention many amazing breakthroughs in health studies appearing on the news. One of those wasn't that long ago, but you called me about an arthritis study, of which 52.3 million adults in the United States suffer. And it's one of the things I hear so much from your listeners. More people are dealing with one form of arthritis or the other. This particular study was for rheumatoid arthritis. A professor, I think his name, if I remember right, was A.J. Joel. And he went head-to-head in his study comparing turmeric to the NSAIDs, ibuprofen, Aleve, aspirin. And what you and I reported on from that study was that turmeric proved more effective for relieving pain, and again, with no side effects. There are 17,000 deaths a year from side effects from the NSAIDs.
At least.
Yeah, now that's what we know about, huh?
Yeah.
Now, Coast to Coast has a lot of listeners whom I hear from asking if there is anything for osteoarthritis and what might bring them some relief, particularly for the pain in their knees, which is a complication of the condition. And people who have been active athletically or walked a lot or exercised a lot can have real pain in their later years from osteoarthritis.
Well, I'm going to tell you a funny story. When I was back in St. Louis on my last trip, I went to my favorite little restaurant there called the Cafe Napoli, owned by my dear friends. And one of their longtime employees, named Joe, had surgery on his knee. And I saw him limp. He came back to work like as quickly as he could because it's his source of income. I saw him limping. I said, Joe, what's wrong with you? And he said, George, I had surgery on my knee, and it still hurts like heck. And I said, you're going to be here tomorrow? And he said, yeah, I'll be here. And I said, all right, great. I gave him a bottle of your turmeric.
Oh.
And I just said, just take a capsule a day. He said, sure, love to. Brand new bottle. It wasn't opened by me, none of that. I'm always suspicious. Somebody gives you an open bottle, right? But it was not. And he took it. And I swear to God, 3 days later, he stopped limping. And I went up to him and I said, tell me something. And he said, well, I'm not going to jinx it, but something's doing something to me because the pain is gone.
Yeah.
And then a couple more days later, he's dancing at the restaurant. And it's amazing. His inflammation, Christian,
that's the word.
went away.
Yeah, and on my website there's I don't advertise my product, incidentally, George.
I know you don't.
I'm not a marketeer. But there are 52 testimonials from people I don't know. And when you read some of them, particularly for not only depression, but osteoarthritis, well, there was a conference in San Diego. There's conferences for everything. And this was for osteoarthritis at the World Conference in about a year ago. And a very well-received study was titled, A Combination of Curcumin and Boswellia together beat Celebrex, and they do it without side effects.
That's amazing.
I hope that is something to help the population of your patients who are suffering. And one of the problems with the NSAIDs is you would like to take more, but you know that the side effects that you're experiencing outweigh taking them.
The benefits, that's right.
Yeah, the benefit. Oh, yeah, that was a study that you had me talk about. The professor on that particular study added a personal comment. He said, sprinkling a little turmeric on your meal or eating out in an Indian restaurant once or twice a week will not give you enough curcumin. He suggests supplements of 400 or 500 milligrams per day.
Hold on for a second,
benefit.
Christian. We're going to be right back. I want to ask you about why you need black pepper in it. And here's the question we asked on our Insta poll at coasttocoastam.com about Edward Snowden. It was, should Edward Snowden, who released the NSA documents, be pardoned and allowed to freely return to the USA? Well, listen to this. 5.2% said undecided. 14% said no, he should not be allowed to return. A whopping 80+% said yes. Let him back. Let him be pardoned and allowed to freely return to the U.S. That's something, huh? 80%. Those are coast-to-coast listeners, and that's probably got a plus or minus of 5%. So that is huge, my friends, huge. Welcome back. Christian Wilde with us as we talk about the studies of turmeric, and also we'll talk about some other issues as well tonight. Christian, the black pepper, why is that necessary?
Well, that's because turmeric by itself is not bioavailable. It passes through the system. Probably 66% of it goes through the feces and the urine, and it is necessary to have a degree of piper nigra or black pepper, and generally speaking, 2,000% increase in bioavailability, with a patented supplement called Warfarin. And that's what we use, Warfarin. Now, I hear from some people that are trying to build a better mousetrap, and they're saying, well, we could maybe get 3,000 or 4,000. And the question is, what is enough?
Mm-hmm.
What is the point of diminishing returns? If 2,000 isn't enough, then what is? So I'm hearing from different companies that they're going to try to increase it. But even Bharat Agrawal at MD Anderson has said he thinks people are making too much of an issue. 2,000 should be adequate.
Got an email in from Paul about turmeric, and he says, in response to some of your suggestions a few years ago, I took it. I casually asked my pharmacist about it. He told me to stop taking it immediately because I take Warfarin, a blood thinner.
That's true.
He said the interaction was potentially deadly. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know how many times tonight I said there are no side effects?
Yes, sir.
There are 3 warnings, which you've heard me say on the show before. If you are pregnant or lactating, if you have bile duct disease or gallbladder disease, and if you are on a blood thinner like a Warfarin. Matter of fact, it's on my site and it's everywhere. That is the concern.
Why?
There is a small ability of turmeric to thin the blood.
So you're saying it thins it even more. If you're taking the medication and the turmeric, that's what the problem is.
What your doctor could do is back off a little on how much Warfarin you're taking, because nobody likes taking it in the first place. And if you could balance it, that's fine.
Turmeric by itself, though, will thin your blood?
A little bit. Like many things, like, even lettuce.
Like aspirin?
Aspirin thins your blood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, if you took too much of anything, you're going to pay a price for it. But when you're taking Warfarin, your physician is monitoring your INR. He's looking at your clotting factors and your clotting times, and it's a very nebulous balance that he has to keep with you. And that's one of the things I always stress is don't do it until you talk to your doctor, and then you may not want to do it.
So this pharmacist knew what he was talking about.
He did. He did.
How many doctors know about this, though? Know about turmeric?
I don't know how they can't. I mean, you cannot. Remember, I told you one time I ran a Google search of curcumin, and then I ran a Google search on turmeric, and I think I came up with close to 20 million articles citations,
hits,
studies, And if the doctor doesn't know about it, his wife is certainly aware of it because she can't open a supplement magazine or the Sunday paper that she doesn't. It's everywhere.
Well, with Christian Wilde, his website, of course, is linked up at coasttocoastam.com, myheartbook.com. He's got a toll-free number if you want to call. Don't call him right now, though. He's talking to me. 866-STEM-123. 866-STEM, S-T-E-M, 123. Turmeric is used for depression, I hear.
It's been used in China for close to 5,000 years for depression. It breaks the blood-brain barrier. It mediates serotonin and there's three other factors that dopamine for sure, and serotonin, and it's healthy for the brain in general. So that, there's a lot of people, I hesitate to say this, because when someone is dealing with depression, 1 out of 10 Americans is, I hesitate to say that the studies have shown head-to-head against Prozac that it was more effective and without the side effects. So I'm not recommending it.
Oh, but Dr. Peter Breggin would say, get off the medication.
And get on the natural. So the neurotransmitters are increased and stimulated, and that's the reason it's used in depression.
What about MS, multiple sclerosis?
There are some studies. I was looking at one today that the Journal of Immunology suggested that turmeric may have far-reaching effects for MS patients, and the reasons are it affects the interleukins, it affects STAT3, interleukin 17, interleukin 6, TGF beta, and this information, as a matter of fact, came out of Ottawa, so that leads me to bring you this information. The MS Society of Canada in Ottawa is doing the most tremendous work, and has been for probably 10 or 12 years, in remedying MS among its patients. There are probably, I don't want to quote it, but I bet you there's over 200 that have gone through the process, and I have a friend right now who is just qualified and will go through it. They were also doing the same resetting the immune system for remitting relapsing MS, and they were doing it at Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern. The success rate was pretty outstanding. I've interviewed 1 or 2 of those people, and I talk to them now after 7 years, and they're still doing great.
Christian, as just with all the things we've been talking about and more coming up here, wouldn't this be just a safe preventative to take?
Absolutely. But, the FDA, and we're not, for sure, you and I are not saying that turmeric is a cure for anything. The FDA isn't saying it. Eventually, how can you not look at the countries that have the lowest Alzheimer's in the world, the lowest cancer in the world?
That's right.
And we'll talk more about that. Did you see a movie called Still Alice? I
did not.
I know you'd appreciate it, because I know we've talked about the kind of films and human spirit that touch you. It's a young lady. She is a linguist professor.
Mm-hmm.
She's a graduate of Harvard, and now she's teaching at Columbia. And of course, as a linguist, she's dealing with words and phraseology constantly.
And it's a movie or a documentary?
It's a movie.
All right.
She won the Academy Award for it, Julianne Moore.
Huh.
And she portrays this young professor. Her name was Alice Howland. And suddenly she's before her class and suddenly cannot grasp words. And she notices it day after day. She doesn't think she's got Alzheimer's because she thinks that's for older people. And she's 50 years old. It turns out she has a genetic form of Alzheimer's, early Alzheimer's. Apolipoprotein ApoE4 is the defective gene. And as I said, Julianne Moore plays the role so beautifully and so sensitively. but a lot of people who have family members who are concerned about themselves, this was one of the first looks at Alzheimer's disease. But I must say, this is a familiar form that affects about 200,000 people. It is not the ultimate one. Now, while we're on that subject, as I said, the lowest Alzheimer's in the world is in India. And one of the leading physicians, scientists, is from UCLA. His name is Gregory Cole. And he took his team to India about 4 years ago and found that among the 65-year-old and older villagers, only 1% had any signs of dementia.
Amazing.
And we know the American Alzheimer Association is predicting $20 trillion.
Now, what else do they eat out there, Christian, beyond the turmeric, the curcumin, that might contribute to
No, that's what it is, George. I'll tell you. It's really no mystery.
It really isn't, is it?
Yeah, it's not a mystery. There's cancer's a mystery. Many of the diseases they've been working on them forever, and are still a mystery. But in the case of Alzheimer's, it is a buildup of beta amyloid plaque and fibril tangles, then infiltrate the brain, short-circuit it, and eventually take it over entirely.
Do they kill the brain?
They kill the brain, and the person gets to the point they don't know how to eat. It's called the long goodbye because the body remains strong, but the mind is gone. They don't know how to eat. They don't know how to take care of themselves. They have anger issues. It is a devastating disease.
It sure is.
However, when they take a mouse, like they did at Duke University,
all right,
and infiltrate that brain till it's completely covered.
These poor mice, by the way.
Poor mice. It's tough to be a mouse today.
It sure is.
You won't see them at the unemployment office. They don't even want to show up. So the mouse, his brain was totally contaminated with these fibril plaques. Now they decide to give the mouse great amounts of turmeric for 6 months.
Liquid form, capsule, what do they do?
No, it's in a powder form.
All right.
And dissolve all of that plaque. So, if the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease is beta amyloid plaque, it's not a mystery. And if the people in India and China who have had a lifetime of small amounts of turmeric, curcumin in their diet, and they don't have the disease, what can you take from that? It seems to be that
you have to conclude that it had a lot to do with it.
It did. You have to come to that enlightenment.
Christian, as you know, I lost my sister to stage 4 brain cancer. I tried to get her on turmeric. It was a little too late. once we found out what happened to her, what she
Mm-hmm.
had. And I'm convinced it was her cell phone, but that's me.
I would agree with that.
But she started taking it, but it was just a little too late. What effect, if any, studies are out there about turmeric's effect on those kinds of cancers? Anything out there?
Good. Very good. At major universities, I think UCLA or Cedars, they use turmeric with the chemo drug, and there's several reasons. With chemo drugs, you have toxicity. That's the big factor.
Sure do.
Many times the physician would like to use 2 or 3 different chemo drugs, but he can't do it because of the toxicity. Turmeric, first of all, in 9 out of 11 studies, reduced the gliomas by 81%. These are all documented in the biochemistry studies. I have them. It reduced the tumor by 81%. Now, if they desensitize the tumor before they give the chemotherapy, they get a much better result. They're doing a lot of this at MD Anderson. So it does 2 things. Shrinks the tumor, and because of the toxicity of the chemo drug, turmeric what I told you earlier, it's antitoxic. It mediates against that toxicity. But there is something for glioblastoma multiforme. I've lost 3 friends from it, and I'm sorry
it's horrible.
You lost your dear sister. And I mentioned to you once, I was looking at some old emails, and I come across one where you had asked me about this, and I said, approach your physicians and ask if they would look into turmeric. What's there to lose? They're telling you it's over.
Right.
And their answer was in the email, it doesn't break the blood-brain barrier. And that is exactly what it does.
It does do that.
That's why they use it, because in 20 minutes it breaks the blood-brain barrier. But here's some good news. Always, if we can find some sunshine, we got to do it. You might have seen it on 60 Minutes. It's the biggest breakthrough. A professor by the name of Matthias Gromier, for 25 years at Duke, has worked on a theory of how he can evade the glioblastoma tumor. And Henry Friedman, who's the director of the Duke Tumor Center, said it's the biggest thing he's seen in 50 years. And what they do is they use a virus, and in this case the polio virus, but it is modified so it won't injure the individual. And I'm using a kind of a simple way of explaining it. I call it a Trojan horse approach, in which on the back of the Trojan horse,
which is the virus,
he's riding on the virus, he's riding on the horse, and what he does is cause the shield around the tumor. That's why they've never been able to break through. It causes it to drop the shield, and in comes the virus. Now, I've seen results within...
And delivers what? The turmeric or something?
No, this isn't the turmeric one. This is a polio virus. They were looking at the HIV virus, and now they're trying to get this on a fast track with the FDA. They're targeting many other types of cancers.
Well, what kills the tumor? The virus or...
The virus.
By itself?
Yeah, it probably comes with a biologic. I'm not quite sure about that.
Jeez.
George, let me ask you a question.
All right.
Not to be overly critical, but with the billions and billions of dollars that are spent year in and year out trying to find cures, medical science is trying to find cures for catastrophic chronic diseases, and they really haven't been able to deliver.
No, they haven't.
And then you look, and not to be overly critical, because these people are professionals.
They're
and
trying.
They're working diligently to do that.
Some of them are.
Yeah. However, when I look at the fact that two of the main diseases are are cancer and Alzheimer's, and then we look at the fact that
okay, you're gonna that's gonna wait until we come back. Well, we're also going to talk with Christian Wilde about his work in stem cell repair when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. Okay, welcome back. Christian Wilde with us. And Christian, before we take calls, I'd like to also talk with you about the stem cell work that you've done. But I'd let you finish up on what you were saying before the break got us. And
George, I was saying in regard to what the traditional medicine is doing, or trying to do, I think it would be so wonderful and so productive if in integrated medicine the two fields were working closer together.
I agree.
Because there are obviously things that they can do. I want to share this with you. If you went on the website tonight, and this was given to me by MD Anderson, the permission to use it, there's a study in which here's how it worked. They treated breast cancer with Taxol. And they, first of all, in one arm of the study, the results, I believe, were 12%. And then they treated in the other arm with just plain curcumin, and the results were 16%. But when they used the two together in combination therapy, the success went to 90%.
Wow.
And when they did it similarly with gemcitabine, the drug of choice for pancreatic cancer, the results were 92%.
That's amazing. Gosh.
That's an example of what I'm talking about.
It's almost unbelievable.
It is. You need to see it because these visuals are pretty impressive.
What's new in the work of stem cells?
Well, you can talk about Gordie Howe. You can talk about John Brody in their stem cell treatments for stroke. It's causing a lot of controversy. I had one brief conversation with one of the principals. They are parsing words. They say these are adult cells, and then scientifically the other side of the coin is that they're not. But you remember 2009, you called me because a young boy had gone to Russia. His family took him to Russia. He had a form of ataxia, and they gave him fetal stem cells. And he ended up in Israel with his entire spine and his brain taken over by tumors.
Yes.
That was from fetal stem cells. That's what they used in this study in Tijuana. They used mesenchymal bone marrow stem cells intravenously, which is wonderful. That's the best one there is. I think there are about 1,500 trials successfully using mesenchymal stem cells. But at the same time, they infused this fetal stem cell through the spine. The man who had, and you know who he is, I think you're a big hockey fan.
Sure.
Gordie Howe.
And he's from Detroit.
So, three Red Wings, right?
Yeah.
3 strokes. They'd given up on him. He wanted to give up on himself. Within an hour, he, under his own power, his family has said this, he got off the table. 2 days later, he boarded an airplane under his own power.
It was amazing.
And so they're watching him to see what happens. But there's a lot of controversy.
It works. It works. Let's take some calls here for you, Christian.
It does work. You know, we haven't talked about prostate cancer.
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Let's go to Rick, Long Island, New York, wildcard line. Hey, Rick, welcome to the show.
Hi, Christian. Hi, George. How are you doing? I
Great.
love the programs when you bring in any of this health stuff. I've been involved in alternate health for a long time now because I have a life-threatening disease myself. But at any rate, to answer your question, you said, what else do they eat? Remember that when you're talking about the incidence of Alzheimer's with people in India? I don't know about India in general. Central India and Bombay might be a little bit different. But I know about the people in northern India, in the area around Rishikesh and up in the foothills of the Himalayas. And all the villagers and all the I lived in a monastery for a period of a year. And one of the things I had to learn, because one of the things that everybody had to do their share of different tasks, and one time I was working in the kitchen, and I learned how they cooked this delicious food that we had all the time. And they said you have to use these 3 mother spices, and they have to be roasted a little bit before. Their diet consists of something called sudsy rice and dal. The rice is basmati rice. Dal is just a bean cooked in a spice sauce. And sudsy is vegetables that are fried with these same 3 spices that put in it. And the 3 spices they use are turmeric, coriander, and cumin.
Yes.
Yeah, and those 3 spices, I asked about it one time. They make the food taste delicious, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
But you started noticing that, there are people that some people get diseases, but the incidence of the typical diseases like they have in America here are much, much less. And I asked one time one of the yogis that worked there, and he said to me, it's in the food, what you cook with. He said, those 3 spices, when they're roasted before they put into the sauce, they have a beneficial effect of all aspects of health. I don't know about coriander. I just know it is a spice that you use when you.
My mother used it a lot.
Oh, it's a good thing. But they do make a black cumin seed oil that you can get.
They do. That's true.
From supplemental places, but I really believe there's a combination of the 3 spices.
I want to tell you that Bharat Agrawal, who I speak of, the professor from MD Anderson. Actually, he's the director of the experimental therapeutics at MD Anderson, and he's also the chief of the cytokines laboratory at the University of Texas. He has a brilliant book out on spices, and he is the world authority on turmeric and spices. He's published more than 600 times in the journals, so you might pick up his book. I wished I knew the name of it. His name is Bharat Agrawal. And I agree with what you're saying.
How much of this, Christian, is simply common sense? Doing some homework, checking some things, and just using common sense?
The problem is, George, it's a dying commodity. If the world had common sense, we wouldn't be in the messes. Oh, here's the book. It's called Healing Spices by Bharat Agrawal, Ph.D. Yeah.
Many of the things you've talked about.
Yeah, if people use common sense, we could solve a lot of problems.
Next up, we go to Scott in San Luis Obispo, California. Hi, Scott. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hello, George. Hello, Dr. Wilde.
Hi.
How are you? Not a doctor.
He's not a doctor, but he's pretty darn good.
Okay, Christian, you remember when I called a few weeks ago? Maybe it was about almost 2 months ago when Dr. Wallach said that my cholesterol was too low, George. You remember it was 119? He said I should be more like 220?
Yes.
You remember that? Well, I wanted to bring this up to you, Christian. So my cholesterol is 119. I have a regimen of, 1,000 milligrams of niacin and 1,200 milligrams, 2,400 milligrams of red rice. My cardiologist suggested I do that. I went from a 203 to a 119, and, I'm perfectly fine. I don't take any medications, but Dr. Wallach was saying that I'm in grave danger concerning diabetes and dementia. And, there's a report in 1948 called the 150 study, and I don't know if you heard about it, but it's been revised over 1,000 times. And it all confirms that anything below 150 is considered the non-heart attack zone. Maybe you can revise that a little bit. Maybe you've...
Yeah, I can. When the Framingham study had been completed, the director decided he would take a number of patients and maintain them at 150 cholesterol and follow them for 5 years. And none of them had heart attacks. Now, I didn't hear the program that you're talking
Right.
about.
Doc Wallach from Critical Health News.
Yeah, who I have regard for.
He claims that low cholesterol is more dangerous than high cholesterol.
Well, yes, because first of all, too low a cholesterol, your brain is in danger of hemorrhagic stroke. You are also in danger of heart failure.
Jeez.
So having an LDL cholesterol, you see, it's
really
a balance. Not the LDL. It's really not the LDL. Listen to this.
Explain that.
It's a subfraction of the LDL. So number one, my mind's going crazy here. Why are you taking 1,000 milligrams of niacin?
He's hung up now, so he's...
Yeah, well, maybe his wife will hear it.
But
if you're taking 1,000 milligrams of niacin...
That's to keep your platelets a little smaller, isn't it?
Well, you're probably raising your homocysteine level to a very, very high rate.
And you don't want to do that.
No, you don't want to do that.
But doctors are recommending niacin. As a matter of fact, there's a drug out there made with niacin called Niaspan.
Niaspan. Then we've also had a lot of studies that were shying away from it.
Now they're saying to be wary of it.
Yeah. Number one, the emphasis, it was in my first book, and only in the past 3 years, after all this time, do I see mainline physicians talking about it. Now they're writing books about it. And that is the subfraction determined by electrophoresis, and it can be done now at Quest. You need to know the type of LDL you have. And if you are developing very fat, buoyant type A particles, you're okay. If you're developing, regardless of what your LDL number is, but if you're subfraction and you're in the B range, you are setting yourself up for problems. As far as overall cholesterol, yeah, when you see people and doctors letting you, I've had doctors say, I'm so proud of my patient. Why are you? Because I've got his total cholesterol down to 100.
And you go nuts, right?
You're killing him.
Yeah.
The body requires cholesterol. It needs a certain amount.
Well, that's what Doc Wallach was saying, and he's opposed to statin drugs.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, it's for some people with familial cholesterol, it's wonderful. If they really have a problem, they don't have too much of a choice. They got to bring. You can't do it through diet alone,
Yeah.
But I'm looking at a prostate study here that the American Society of Clinical Oncology.
I thought for a moment you said you were looking at a prostate.
not
what
on your
the
life.
heck are you doing?
We were talking about China a while ago. I hope you don't get a phone call from Donald Trump.
We might get calls from China on our Skype line. But prostate cancer is dangerous for guys when they get older.
Absolutely. And this was a 63.8% improvement, and it was at the American Society of Clinical Oncology when the patients in the study were given a combination of pomegranate seed, broccoli, green tea, and turmeric over a 6-month period. A 63.8 reduction in their PSA levels.
Did they add saw palmetto to that?
They could, but they wouldn't in the study.
Because that, I think, would help a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you.
I sound like a chemist, don't I?
You are. You're a chemical guy.
Let's go to Billy in Brunswick, Georgia. First-time caller. Hi, Bill. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen. I didn't know I was actually going to get put on the air tonight.
Well, you called, so you made it. Go ahead.
Oh, well, great. Well, I was telling your call screener, I had an accident back in November and fell off a ladder cleaning a roof and broke my back.
Ouch.
And partially dislocated my hip.
Wow.
Through basically eating my stomach out with the Aleve and the Advils and such, and was told to get off those. I had heard I think on your program once, but talking with some other a neighbor of mine about curcumin and stuff. And so trial and error, basically what I have come up with, I use 4 ounces of turmeric, 4 ounces of cayenne pepper, 4 ounces of ginger, and 2 ounces of black pepper, and I mix it together in a container.
You're doing it right.
3 times,
You're doing fine.
3 times a day, I take a heaping teaspoon of that in a cup, mixed with 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar.
You're a good man. How much are you improving from that?
From where I was back in November, December, and January, could hardly walk, and it caused my left knee to go out because it had totally destroyed my gant the way I walked.
Wow.
I'm probably 90% better right now.
Good for you.
Sorry to hear that.
Good for
But
you.
I'm glad to hear you're doing better.
He's 90% better.
Yeah.
And if just a little 1 or 2 more things, and plus I'm 58 years old, so a few things like that add into it. But I had a compounding pharmacist also. I talked to him about it, and he made me up at the time then when I was in my worst pain, a mixture of DSMO, curcumin, some kind of oil base to make it to where it would spread, and one other ingredient that I can't remember right now, but he had it in a tube where I could spread out about a pea size of it and put on my hip, back, or my knee, and within 20 minutes, that totally alleviated all the pain.
That's fantastic. Billy, thanks for that call. I appreciate it. I love success stories like that.
I do,
Christian.
too.
Next up, let's go to Glenn in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey, Glenn, go ahead.
Hello.
Good to have you with us, Glenn.
Well, Christian saved my life.
He did?
I can say that much.
What did he do?
Yeah. Christian, you know me?
Yep, I do.
Okay. Right, okay. Yeah, I got really bad, George. I'd had a heart murmur for about 5 years, and my cardiologist in November, I went to see him, and he called me. He said, I want to do an echocardiogram on you tomorrow, and we did at Vanderbilt, and he called me that night at home. He said, well, what used to be mild is now very severe. And so I had 3 surgeries in Nashville. Nashville's the allergy capital of the United States. All 3 surgeries on shoulder replacement and knee replacement, I got pneumonia.
Oh.
And my cardiologist said, well, you sure don't need to have heart surgery here in Nashville. Said, you get pneumonia with open heart surgery or surgery,
You're
you could
gone.
die.
Yeah.
And so I called Linda Howe. Linda's a good friend of mine. And I asked Linda, I said, can you get a hold of Christian Wilde or get his phone number for me? Because evidently Vanderbilt and them didn't have any of the TAVI program here in Nashville. And she said, yeah, I think I can. So she called me back the next day and gave me Christian's number. And I called Christian out in L.A. and told him who I was, and I'd been in the music business all these years. And him and I are good friends with Russ Regan.
I love Russ. Good man.
Russ has been friends since 1957. I've known Russ.
Found the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
That's right.
and Elton
anyway,
John.
I'd built a bunch of studios on the West Coast. Christian had recorded, and most of them we hit it off. And I told him, I said, I need to have surgery somewhere where I don't have asthma. And he first suggested L.A., and I said, well, I can't come to L.A. My wife would have no support there. I said, my wife has a sister, lives in Dallas. We used to live in Dallas when we had Autumn Sound in Garland. And so Christian said he had recorded at Autumn Sound. He said, I've got a good friend of mine at the Baylor Heart Hospital in Plano, Texas.
Good hospital.
And so he got a hold of the doctor, what was his
Dr. Paul Grayburn.
Grayburn, yeah. And so Paul called me and said that he needed to get all my records from Dr. Hansen, and so we got them, and he called me back. He said, well, you're going to have to come to Dallas for a clinic to see if you qualify.
Hold on, Glenn, right there. I'm going to put you on hold. We have to take this break, but I want you to finish this incredible story. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Norrie with you. Next hour, James Parrish joins us. How to pray for a financial miracle. So get ready for that. We've got Christian Wilde for the rest of this half hour, and we'll take final calls. Let's go back to Glendale and Nashville, where Christian was very influential in helping him out. Glenn, I'll let you and Christian pick up that story from there. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Well, first of all, Glenn, how are you feeling? Because you were in a real bad way. How are you doing now?
I'm feeling better than I felt in 10 years. I feel like I felt 10 years ago. I had a digital console sitting in my studio in the basement of my house for 4 years that I'd never even got out of the crate. And we've now got the studio back up. We've got the console out of the crate. We're in the process of hooking it all up. And what I was going to say is when Christian got me with Dr. Grayburn, he wanted me to come to a clinic in Dallas the first part of January, and I went down there, and they put me through the clinic, and he walks in about 4 o'clock that afternoon with 4 other doctors, and he looks at me and he goes, "I know you." I said, "I recorded at Autumn Sound in the 70s with you when I was a songwriter." And I'm going, oh, my goodness, what a small world.
It sure is.
I got to interject, what a small world. Paul, Glenn is talking to me on the phone, and he says, I said, what studios did you build in L.A.? And he mentioned Devonshire Sound, and I worked in most of them. And then he said, and then I built a studio in Garland. And I said, Garland? There's only one studio in Garland. You didn't build Autumn Sound, did you?
You sure
Yes,
did.
I did. And then he said, how did you know about it? I said, because they brought me down there to produce a recording session one time. I had a $35,000 Boisendorfer piano in there. Anyway, so Paul, I met Paul through Randy Travis and his wife, Mary. And when I asked him if he would intervene and see what he could do for Glenn, he went all the way. And as a result of that, I guess, Glenn, you're a new man.
What did he do, Glenn, exactly? What happened?
Well, what happened is they said they had stopped the TEVI program for intermediate. Now, the FDA controls the TEVI program. You have to be a critical patient before they can put you in the TEVI program. If you're a candidate for open heart surgery, the doctor here in Nashville told me, he said, well, you're not a candidate for a TEVI program. You got to have open heart surgery. And I told him, I said, I don't want open heart surgery in Nashville. I said, if I wind up with pneumonia, I could die. And he said, well, that's true. So anyway, they had an intermediate program, but Dr. Grayburn told me, said they're supposed to vote this back in as a testing program the middle of January. Said if you can stay around, said when we get it voted back in, if they don't add something to it, we'll make you first on the list, and you'll be the first one we do the TEVI thing. I said, okay, I'll stick around. Well, the 17th, they called me and said, well, they voted it back in, but they put some other stipulations in. Now the attorney's got to get with the FDA, with Medicare, and get Medicare to pay for it. I said, well, I can't stay in Dallas that long. I got to go back. So I went back to Nashville with my cardiologist here in Nashville going, you got to have this surgery. Says you're on dangerous ground. And so anyway, the end of February, they called and said, okay, we got it approved. Be down here the 4th of March, and we'll do it. So I went back down on the 4th of March. They took me in, and they did the thing, and I woke up, and my wife's standing there going, they didn't replace your heart valve. I go, what? And she said, no, that they always do an echocardiogram down through your throat before they do anything on a heart procedure. And when they did, they found a white spot on my mitral valve, and they thought it was infection. And so then they wanted to give me vancomycin for 4 weeks through the vein, which is really heavy-duty antibiotics. And my cardiologist in Nashville looked at it. He goes, that's not infection. That's a benign tumor.
Huh.
And but the gal that was on that TAVI program that morning was filling in. Turns out she's the number one heart valve replacement surgeon for Baylor. And Baylor is now the number one heart hospital in the nation. And so anyway, she come in to see me a couple of times, and I asked a couple of the nurses, what is she like? And they said, oh, man, she was great. So when I went back to Nashville to take the vancomycin, in the meantime, Christian's praying for me, and Russ Regan's praying for me, and I got all kind of other people praying for me. And so Dr. Harrington called me the end of March and said, Glenn, you've been taken out of the TAVI program. I said, why is that? They said, because they will only let you do it if nothing else is wrong with your heart. You can only have the valve wrong with it. And said, you're going to have to wind up with open heart surgery. And I said, well, will you do it? She said, yeah, I'll do it, but it'll be a week and a half before I can do it. I said, okay, I'll be there. So I went back down there on April 8th. They did the open heart surgery and did this. Christian was on the phone every day with me. So was Russ Regan praying for me and all. I went through that, come out with flying colors.
Perfect.
It took about 2.5 months before I really started to feel better. It's been over 4 months now since I've had it, and I feel like I felt all
Good
along.
for you. How old are you, Glenn?
I'm 75 years old.
Good for you. Christian, another miracle.
I built, Devonshire was our studio in L.A. Whitney Houston cut her first 5 albums.
Did she really?
We did the Wings Over America tour in that we mixed in Dallas at Autumn Sound, and we built Village Recorders and Hollywood Sound. And
who was your biggest star that you worked with, Glenn? If it wasn't Whitney Houston,
that I personally worked with,
or that you saw come through
probably
your
the
studios?
Beach Boys. You know?
Really?
Yeah, I did a lot of work with them.
Yeah, they were classics. Glenn, thanks for calling. Appreciate it. We've got so many calls here for you, Christian. But you saved another person.
Let's give the credit to Dr. Paul Grayburn. What a wonderful guy. He stood in the breach, and he said, Christian, I will do everything I can for this fellow.
Down in Baylor, huh?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. But good for you. You have saved the lives of so many coast-to-coast listeners. I mean, it's just magnificent what you've done.
Oh, thank you, George.
Let's go next to Charles in Baltimore. Charles, thanks for calling, sir. Go ahead.
How you doing?
Good, Charles.
Okay, yes, I'm wondering about you were talking about stem cells a while ago.
Yeah.
Will there ever be a day, and probably not in my lifetime, where I'd like somebody who's never seen before, and I never have, that you put them in there, and the person would be able to get around and see and know what somebody else knew who, who's seen all their life. I don't think that's really quite likely, right?
Let me ask you, your optic nerve is it's inactive totally, right?
Right. Yes, I'm pretty mature. I'm RLF. They call it ROP now, retinal fibroplasia. They call it retinopathy or prematurity. I mean, I'm just being realistic.
They're doing some marvelous things, though, Christian.
Yes, they are, and I tend to. I told you, George, about 3 years ago, I was a keynote speaker at the California Blind, and it just touched me so much. Every time I see someone like our friend on the phone right now having to deal with sightlessness, I say, there, but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to call you and say, hey, I found something that can do this for you.
Shall we put them on hold and get a phone number for you?
Yeah, why not?
All right, Tommy.
I'm always looking.
We'll get Charles's number and we'll get it to you, Christian. You'll help another person like you have. My God, when they give out an award for sainthood one day, it should be you. Or at least the least we could do is play your Christmas songs and "Oh Danny Boy" once in a while, right?
Oh, that's good. I want you to play "You'll Never Walk Alone" too.
Yeah, you like that song.
Yeah, I may be going in. Glenn wants me to come down to. Is he still there?
He's talking to Tom.
Hey, Glenn wants me to come down there, and he heard some of my songs. He says, I got to team you up with the top writers in Nashville.
Oh, you'd love
to come down. You know, I was started to mention because there are 29 million in the United States with diabetes, and another 8.5 million in pre-diabetes.
Does that include type 1, type 2?
Not 1. It's just 2 and pre-diabetes. I didn't think there was a pre-diabetes. I thought the Diabetes Association did away with that.
Yeah, you either had it or you didn't.
You didn't. But here's a study, Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry reported that among people with pre-diabetes, taking just 250 milligrams of curcumin per day was found to delay the onset to type 2 diabetes. Also confirmed by the Journal of the Diabetes Association that extract of 250 per day was 100% successful at preventing pre-diabetes.
Now, what's your definition of pre-diabetes?
You are probably 125, 126.
Glucose, fasting?
Yeah. And then I got to give you some news for your type 2 patients. 100 patients given 300 milligrams per day or placebo at the end of 3 months. The patients in the curcumin group, when compared with those who were on placebo, had a decline in blood glucose levels, hemoglobin A1C, insulin resistance, and fatty acids. That's some good news there. Somebody can try it.
What do you think of metformin?
Metformin's been a godsend.
It seems to be.
Yeah, it has been. And I will tell you that some of those, be really careful. If you're on insulin or you're on some of these drugs like that have come out recently for diabetes, check them out. There's an awful lot of people have died while on it, including our friend Billy.
Oh, Billy, yeah.
He got pancreatic cancer from it. So please check out some of those new drugs. Metformin doesn't have that history.
Let's go to Dennis in Philadelphia now. Hi, Dennis. Thanks for holding.
George and Chris, hi.
Hey.
Hi, I have a situation going and where I have stenosis, where gradually the discs are narrowing around the spinal cord, and eventually I'm going to, fall flat on my face and not be able to walk. So a friend of mine who had the same situation, he had to he had to be operated on, and he had 7 of those where he had to be fused, and now he has clamps and screws in his back and so forth. So he recommended me to his doctor. And as a matter of fact, this week I'm going to be, I have to see the doctor to find out how he wants to slice and dice me. Is there anything that I can take that would stop the narrowing of the disc? And the other question is, my friend who went through this, while he was, first of all, I will not take any pain medication, none of the prescription pain medication. I don't want to turn into a legal junkie. But
you may have to. If you're going through a serious, the way you're describing it, that's going to be a very serious surgery.
Well, he went through the same thing, and he got hooked on all the pain medication to where now he had to keep taking laxatives. Now he can't go to the bathroom without a laxative.
Vicodin.
See if you could, if you would qualify for a local.
But does turmeric help stenosis? Has there ever been a study of that?
Turmeric helps everything, but if you have advanced stenosis, you've come to a time when you have to do something.
Dramatic.
It's not going to just correct itself on its own. And you're talking about, you may want to get a second opinion, first of all, but if you have to have surgery, if your life is so miserable, then your options are pretty lean. Did your friend do okay with this surgeon?
Hello?
Yeah,
Did your friend do okay?
Yeah, well, yeah, he has no pain. But what happened was because of the operation, what happened to him? Now he's in a wheelchair and his legs are numb from the knees down. I mean, he can walk some without it. he spends most of his time in the wheelchair, but like I said, he is still numb from the knees down, and gradually he's getting.
Did they fuse him? Did they do several fuses?
They did. They did 7 of them. I mean,
that's pain.
But what can he do? Beside myself, what can he do to get off of the laxative so he can go to the bathroom? He has to stimulate the nerves in his bowels to start going by himself, because he's been on that pain medication.
They've numbed him. Yeah.
Did they give him any follow-up? Did they have nurses, aides, or anybody working with him?
Well, from what he told me, he said that first of all, they said he would never walk again, but he found a doctor that did not buy that, and like I said, he can walk some, but they stopped all the therapy because they said this is as far as we can go with you now. So so he just has to wait, as they told him, for the nerves to begin growing back, to get some of the feeling back in his legs, so he can walk permanently without.
What about these laser spine places? Christian, have you checked into them?
You could look into that. I mean, you remember, what you do now, you're going to be stuck with. So make sure you do your due diligence. And if you want to look into anything, now's the time to do it. How much pain are you in right now?
Well, I'm in pain 24 hours a day, but like I said, I have a very high tolerance for pain. I will not take no pain medication. Just to take the edge off, I'll take like a Motrin or an Advil or something like that, but I will not take any nerve medication. I'm doing stretching, I'm doing some exercises, and that seems to help temporarily. And then once I stop, and then it's all over, it starts all over again.
I understand. You're a brave man.
How about turmeric, Joe? It won't hurt him, Christian.
It won't hurt him at all. I got to tell you, my back would go out about 2 or 3 times a year on the average.
Just by bending over doing something?
Anything, yeah. And I swear, since I've been taking my own turmeric, I have not had a tinge of pain or any reason to be concerned.
Good for you. Christian, we're almost out of time. Only have about a minute left. Please give out your toll-free number and your website.
Website, myheartbook.com. The turmeric is there. The books on heart disease and prevention are there. 818-506-7889 is one phone number if it's busy. 866-STEM, STEM, 123.
Can they call that now that you're almost off?
Yeah, call the... oh, boy, we're going to have some phone calls here. I hear from your people,
they love you, kid.
On the road,
They love you. Let's talk soon. Let's go to lunch while I'm still in L.A., all right?
I would love to.
Okay. Take care of yourself. Christian Wilde, of course, his website, myheartbook.com. Phone number, 1-866-STEM-123.